It's a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. On today's show, we invite Nick Fairbanks back to the show to discuss first day of training camp and everything heading into the weekend, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, September 23rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MonoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On NHL and Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Still Roden. We'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered with this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, Cats fans, it's a very exciting day yesterday. First day of training camp. New energy in the building, of course, with the little bit of turnover for this roster coming in, and of course the different coaching staff. But the great thing about it is just that the fact that hockey is back, really. And of course, let me bring in my guest into the show, Nick Fairbanks, to discuss first day of practice and even maybe things prior to that as well. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back, Armando. It's been a little bit, but I'm excited that the season's starting again and that we'll have some games to talk about here soon. But, let's start off with the first day of training camp and, let's, hear about the excitement that happened the first day.
Yeah, first day of training camp and lots of excitement. Basically, really, of course, the biggest highlight of the anticipation, more like, of what the energy was going to be when Matthew Tkachuk was going to hit the ice for the Florida Panthers. In the first practice, they split to groups like A and B. Tkachuk was part of the second group for the Florida Panthers. But let's kind of talk a little bit about the first group of the Panthers as well. We saw a lot of the anticipated lines together. Paul Maurice went for mostly for pairs working together because they were working more on like one-on-one rushes earlier and then two-on-two rushes later, and then he was putting like a third person on a line. Like, it was someone different every single time. One time you saw Barkov with Sam Reinhart, another time you saw Rodolphe Balcers with Barkov and Verhaeghe, and then we even saw one where it was Barkov and Logan Hutsko even in one rush. So it's a little first day of training camp. I was talking to David Dwork about this, and he was discussing, saying that with the new coaching staff and having three coaches in like kind of less than a year span, it's like really to have a little perspective on it, that last year's lines isn't something to really have is to not like kind of set a baseline for.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the target there that, having three or maybe two coaching staffs, for the Florida Panthers, it's really going to come down to, really like figuring out who's going to be able to fill into what spots. I know that Maurice said that he doesn't want to change the scoring for this team, but he's also got to make sure that, number one, from day one and also game one, that they're playing a style that's going to be taking them past the second round, or at least, hopefully to a Stanley Cup finals appearance. So you really got to figure out who's going to be able to play what, who's going to have chemistry, but also kind of show the young guys, hey, this is what it's going to be like, coming in, and, this is what you need to do to make a shot, to have a shot to make the roster. So it's going to be interesting to see who else they throw in. I'm very interested to see what the Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Balcers line would be able to do. Because, listen, I know it seems like that they just threw that line together, but don't be surprised if they throw that in the season.
Yeah, and I asked Sam Reinhart on Wednesday during media day, like how much guys will need to step up, including himself, being with Anthony Duclair being out. So the right side of the forward groups is kind of something really to look at, really not just on the top line, but really throughout the lineup as well. And speaking of the winger positions for the Panthers, one player is a guy that I've been talking about all summer as far as being able to prove himself, is someone like Grigori Denisenko. The way Paul Maurice conducted the practice, it was like really full speed, and kind of to see like kind of where these players' endurances are. Something Paul Maurice said after practice that he said that he's not worried about. And Grigori Denisenko participated in every single drill, and very encouraging to see that he's able to move out there. So maybe he has a shot to make it.
Definitely. And, I know that you and I have talked about, Denisenko and if he makes the roster or if he goes back down to Charlotte, but this may be a make or break year for him. I'd like to think that Florida would give him another, year past this one just to further develop, because I think that, they have the time to do that. But at the same time, as you said, the right side is not probably the strong point anymore. This team has kind of changed over from year to year, where depth was a huge plus last year and it really helped out the team. Whereas now this year, unfortunately, the departure of some players and injury to others to start the season has actually shown to be a little bit of an opportunity. So everybody needs to step up and do their part to make sure that it's not going to be a weakness going into the season.
And let's also discuss D pairs. Of course, there was going to be questions about who was going to be paired with who. Daily Faceoff had their projections before the season, but it actually kind of came to light really in the first day of practice. Radko Gudas was paired with Lucas Carlsson. The expected also Forsling and Ekblad in group number 1, but Gudas and Carlsson were paired in group number 2. I had an opportunity to ask Radko Gudas during the media availability yesterday what he thinks about Lucas Carlsson and playing with him. Here's the clip of that.
I think he's great. He did great steps. He looks a lot faster than he was last year. He put some muscle on too, so I think he's doing a great job. He did a great job in the off season. I'm looking forward to get some games with him. So looking forward to play with a young guy like himself.
So Nick, Radko Gudas' response with Lucas Carlsson being a lot stronger coming into the season, and very encouraging words from Radko Gudas. Of course, Lucas Carlsson being still a young, on the younger side, still in his 20s. Of course, we spoke about a few days ago, just him being part of that trade for Henrik Borgstrom, getting rid of Brett Connolly's contract, but something that the Florida Panthers could possibly salvage as far as getting a trade piece back from that Borgstrom and getting rid of Connolly's contract. So now, but it's really opportunity for someone like Lucas Carlsson, really for this mix of the D pairs.
Yeah, and in the games that he was able to get in last year, he didn't look out of place. He actually looked like he fit in just fine, and I would probably say that he actually gave the team a little bit of a shot in the arm, a little jolt to play. He moves very well. I think he's actually gotten a little bit faster, or at least he looks faster, which is a huge help, because I think Gudas coming into this season, as he's another year older, probably needs the help or the compensation for that. And I think that they would work well together. You have Gudas, who's going to be the bruiser still and be that hopefully more of that stay-at-home defenseman. But then, what happens if a breakdown happens? Is Carlsson going to be able to cover for him? And I think that would be something to look forward to make sure that he does do that.
And who isn't showing signs of slowing down despite being in his 30s? Patrick Hornquist. I saw him on quite a few rushes going when they were working on 2-on-2s, and he was converting often on those rushes. He was part of Group B, and really they were working on rushes on one side with Spencer Knight and then JF Berube on the other. We could say what we want about JF Berube, but we saw Patrick Hornqvist really connecting on a lot of these rushes going the other way. I saw him paired up with Colin White a little bit as well. I saw also Colin White paired put together with the Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk also together as well. But Patrick Hornqvist, listen, we've spoken all summer about the cap hit that is, but hey, maybe Patrick Hornqvist has heard a little bit of the noise about a possibility of a trade, and hey, it seems like that coming into the season, it's a little bit of a F you guys. I'm still going to try to prove myself here.
Yeah, and I think it comes with, maybe two mindsets that he's coming in, or two ideas that he's coming in with, was, hey, this might be my last chance with this team to win something or to prove something. Or secondly, this might be my last chance to actually have a job here in the NHL. Not saying he doesn't deserve one, because, he's a fantastic player to have on the bench, almost like a fourth or fifth coach there to get the boys going. But there's a lot of questions you have to ask, is, like, how long is his body going to be able to be, able to last during the season? Is he going to be durable, or is he going to have, times where he's going to be missing 2 or 3 weeks at a time? The other thing that I wanted to bring up too is, is he going to be able to be that net presence that Florida needed in his first season? Because I can remember a few games where he dominated in front of the crease, and he was able to get his stick, or maybe a jersey, or maybe a chin on the puck. I remember a goal specifically where it went off its chin and it went in, and it was a huge goal. So hoping that's the Patrick Hornqvist the Florida Panthers get, because as we said, coming into the season, they're not going to have a lot of depth, and they need everybody to step up. And I would expect him as a leader to lead that way and to produce that way.
Mm-hmm. Another player that, and we're gonna mention your boy Anton Lundell. We have, of course, first time in the last few years that the media was able to enter the locker room and kind of to see, go player by player, at least the ones who are actually available. After Radko Gudas spoke to the media, we had an opportunity to walk over to Anton Lundell. And something that we noticed was that Anton Lundell's locker, at least at the practice facility, we haven't seen it in the arena yet, but at the practice facility in Coral Springs, is right next to Barkov's. And I think, of course, the second year being a more of a growth year, while in your rookie season, you're trying to, kind of figure it out and all that. But Anton Lundell confirmed last year that his locker was on the other side, the opposite side of Barkov. And maybe Huberdeau being traded might have something to do with that as well. Talked about how people had to speak it into existence with him being next to Barkov. Of course, when he first came to the U.S., he roomed with Barkov right before getting an actual place. And of course, his game developing, of course, with some injuries that happened last season, kind of hurt his chances for the Calder. But now that his locker is next to Barkov, I think that's a really big help for someone like Anton Lundell.
It definitely is. And, you wonder, with the lockers being next to each other, if that's going to be for the in-game purposes as well, that, they're going to be talking in between periods of what they could work on and what they could do, because, you can talk face to face, across the locker room or whatever, but I think there's more of an intimate kind of, action there that, the two players can talk and say, hey, listen, I noticed this on the ice. This is what I want to do about it. Or, hey, what would you suggest doing in this type of situation? Because this is what they're trying to do. I think that the communication will be much better. And then secondly, I just think that having that mentorship going from year 1 to year 2 from Barkov would be huge, because I don't want to say he's on the same projection as Barkov, but, I especially expect him to actually take another leap this year. I don't think there's going to be a sophomore slump with him, but it's going to be up to him, and it's going to be up to him going to Barkov for guidance to make sure that he continues to grow his game.
And Barkov's big jump, at least point wise, didn't really come until year 3 of playing in the NHL. So if there's a little bit of, if we don't see the point production for Anton Lundell, at least to that level, it's really not something to like really freak out about. And of course,
Correct.
and Paul Maurice was asked about the possibility of him playing wing in his post game availability. Is really the opportunity for more people to, with of course he spoke about Anthony Duclair's injury, about opportunities for versatility as well. And you also mentioned someone like Sam Reinhart, his ability to play center as well. So you have a lot of versatility with this Panthers team, that's for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about another player that impressed me in day 1 of training camp. We're going to discuss that more next on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline is your number 1 source for all your football betting options this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, and podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Continuing this conversation on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. And Nick, one player that really stuck out to me, we were talking about this pre-recording, of course. We spoke about who's going to be that 7th defenseman for the Florida Panthers, and one person who really stuck out to me as far as someone who closing their gaps, as someone who kind of looked out of position in as Matthew Tkachuk was beating him, and just as he was about to be beat, Matt Kiersted, I saw like a big poke check to like get the puck away on a rush when when it looked like he was gonna get beat, and quite a few times we saw that Matt Kiersted didn't even allow a shot on goal, which is what you want out of a defenseman. And even some friendly chirping from Matthew Tkachuk to Matt Kiersted, even after the play, just joking around. Of course, the boys being the boys at practice, it's a fresh energy of day 1. But that's the guy really who I really was discussing most of this with Alex Baumgartner of 5 Reasons Sports. So a great first day for Matt Kiersted, and I was really impressed from what I saw.
Yeah, and I think Matt needs it. He had a couple games a few seasons ago when he signed the contract to come to Florida, and then I believe he only got maybe a game or 2 last year. This might be, one of those, prove it, seasons before, let's say Florida decides to either turn the page or maybe offers them contract extension, just because they do need help on the defensive side. So he's still young enough. I think he has the aptitude and also probably the speed to play. It's just more or less where is his decision making going to go with it? And then also, is he going to be able to stack up and play maybe 30 or 40 games during the season? Because if he's going to be the 7th defenseman, you have to think that there's going to be injuries that arise, and hopefully not long, substantial ones, but he's going to be depended on. So great to hear that he had a great first day. I'm just looking forward to it translating to game 1, or at least a couple games this season, so that he can solidify himself and actually be a part of the Florida Panthers team instead of Charlotte.
Yeah, and with Kiersted, that there's a level of growth when he's not paired with an Ekblad, he's not paired with a Gudas, he's not paired with a Montour, but he's actually paired with someone who's been around the league. He was actually paired with someone who's been around the league for a little bit, in Michael Del Zotto as well. So, a guy who's trying to be trying to make a place in this lineup, paired up with a guy who's been there before. So it's kind of a comfort level that Paul Maurice has in someone like Kiersted, saying, hey, this is a guy who's been here, learn from him, chat with him, communicate with him. And that's kind of the impression I got from Matt Kiersted being paired with Michael Del Zotto. Another pair for the Panthers that we saw on the D, Mark Stahl and Brandon Montour. Look like that's going to be the anticipated third pairing for the Florida Panthers. And we even saw some one-on-one stall action, which was pretty cool to see with his brother Eric, of course, not playing in the NHL last year, playing in the AHL before going to the Olympics. So pretty cool to see stall together. But let's also talk about the energy Matthew Tkachuk brought. Spoke about earlier about him and Matt Kierstead, but they were working on their dump-ins and board battles. Paul Maurice and media availability in during media day spoke about how they want to work 3 feet from the boards. Did a lot of that in day one. These guys probably after practice were probably like breathing hard with how much Paul Maurice pushed them in day one. And even we saw a little bit of Matthew Tkachuk and Ryan Lomberg fighting along the end boards, and even Matthew Tkachuk bringing Ryan Lomberg down, like tackling him, like and even just getting up and a little bit of laughs. So different energy for Matthew Tkachuk and Paul Maurice. Later, I was able to ask Paul Maurice about lines and how he views day one of camp and familiarity as well, and he spoke about how he wants to put players together who are familiar, and putting Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett together because of course they have some history in Calgary as well. So that gives me a good impression of what to start. But also Paul Maurice says that this isn't going to be like a 1 to 2 week thing for this Florida Panthers team, that it's going to be like a 3 or 4 month project to start the season, to get a feel of like who works well with who.
Yeah, and sometimes if it's not broken, don't fix it. So you gotta assume that Barkov and Verhaeghe are gonna stick together. They just gotta find that right winger that's gonna play up with them. Tkachuk and Bennett makes total sense. I have to wonder if Colin White's gonna jump up in the second line and kind of take over Anthony Duclair's spot, because I know they practice together. But I wouldn't be surprised if during the season we see Ryan Lomberg pushed up on the second line, just for a few shifts, just to get that energy going. But I think Maurice just wants to get a feel for not only who's familiar, but also who's going to be responsible and take their job seriously, and who's listening, because while he doesn't want to stagnate the offense, he's going to make sure that everybody's going to be responsible. And if he notices that people don't want to be responsible or don't want to play the defense, which I find it hard to believe that anybody on this team wouldn't, but at the same time, they got to set the precedent that this is how they're going to play throughout the whole season. And this is what's going to get them to the next level in the playoffs. So I think it's just figuring those pieces out, and hopefully by December or January that they have something figured out and that they can roll with it going forward and not have to make too many changes outside of possible injuries.
I had an opportunity to ask also Sam Bennett about his adjustments going into this season. He was asked about Matthew Tkachuk being back. Paul Maurice was talking about Sam Bennett's resurgence as well, going to center versus playing the wing in Calgary. He talked about how he's been able to resurge his career. Sam Bennett really says that he was one of the first people that he hit up when Tkachuk was traded to the Florida Panthers. But this is also a little bit of an adjustment period for Sam Bennett, because the 911 line does not exist anymore with Huberdeau gone, Duclair hurt. So we're seeing, you mentioned it, Bennett, possibly Colin White on the right side, and then Tkachuk on the left side. So this is going to be a little bit of a different season for someone like Sam Bennett.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. Obviously, I found great chemistry with those guys and had some success with them. Really enjoyed playing with them, but it's hockey. There's going to be things moving around. There's going to be things out of your control, and you just got to find new chemistry with other guys, and I'm excited to get the opportunity to find that.
He's been in the league, I mean, for a while now. This is going to be like his 8th season, I believe. So it's not something that this guy's not already used to. So we could think that Sam Bennett might take a little bit of an adjustment period, but I don't think it's going to be something that's going to last like 10 or 15 games for someone like Sam Bennett.
No, and we hope not. When you're a professional, you're able to adapt, and I think the coaching staff will be able to see if it's working well or not, and then they'll make the adjustments then. The one concern I have is that is Sam Bennett going to be able to change his game a little bit, because he's not going to have Huberdeau dishing him the puck. He's going to have Tkachuk, and he's going to have possibly Colin White that, they may be getting down in the dirty areas and everything. So where's Sam Bennett going to play? Is he going to get in front of the net? Is he going to be in a more supportive role? Is he going to, when he gets the puck, is he going to try and take on the whole defense, kind of like, what he's done in the past and lose the puck? He kind of reminds me, and I think I've spoken about this before, he kind of reminds me of Vincent Trocheck a little bit. He'll take it through the neutral zone and try to skate through everybody. Understandably, but you need to use your teammates and do what's best for the team, and probably just dump and chase. And we'll see if he gets the memo, because then he'll have Matthew Tkachuk that is, somebody who will go along the boards and win puck battles. And, let's see if they can develop that trust and that chemistry right off the bat, because I think that would be beneficial if they understand that that's what the game plan is going to be.
And even for dump and chase, one of the guys, either Sam Bennett going to the boards and then someone cutting into the net, and then you see a pass as someone's cutting in. So that's something that could definitely work for this team. And of course, that's why they work on these drills. And man, even just watching it myself, and seeing how they were going really at full speed, that I even felt like I was getting tired just by like watching everybody going at full speed. I could only imagine the players. And listen, before even going into the locker room, it was like a 15-20 minute period in between. And then the PR department was talking about how they had to do a lot of like stretching after the practice and that's how that Paul Maurice really day one set it was really about setting the tone, saying, hey, this is how we're going to practice. This is how we're going to get you guys to game speed. And of course, the stretching outside of that as well, kind of keeping these guys' bodies like ready for when game one does happen. So that I got a good first impression from day one of practice.
No, that's good. And not to take away from any other coaching staffs in the past, I think from the first practice, you have to set the tone, and whether you want it to be more of a player-friendly practice, like, hey, we're just here for training camp, let's just get ready to go. You can decide whether you want to have a hard practice, or, you can decide to be more of a player's coach and say, hey, guys, it's first day of training camp. Let's not burn ourselves out. We have a long season. That may be more of a veteran move, but I think with Paul Maurice coming in and what's on the table and what Florida's trying to accomplish, they don't have any excuses. They don't have any time to waste, really, although that they are taking more of an approach to kind of wait and see what works. But they need to figure this out. They got barely past the first round, this last season. If it wasn't for, Bobrovsky and for Hagee, there's a good chance that they don't get out of the first round. And then, unfortunately, in the second round, we know what happened. So there's a lot that they need to improve on, and there's a lot that they need to prove this season, especially with the season they had last year. And I just think that, with Maurice coming in and setting that tone right away, that every player should be put on notice, and hopefully they get the message, and from game one, they understand that it's go time.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely go time. We're going to discuss more about that in the third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to this third segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on the September 23rd edition of the show. I got Nick Fairbanks here on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So guys have been around for 2 weeks already. Matthew Tkachuk spoke about how he doesn't need a GPS anymore to get to the arena and the ice tent in Coral Springs. So, hey, it's great to see that he's been he's been in the market already for a little bit, and that he's kind of getting used to, like, which door do I enter just to get to the facility? Which way do I go to get to the rink? So, takes a little bit for everyone coming into a new situation. But hey, Matthew Tkachuk was he feels comfortable already. And of course, in media day, Barkov was talking about how he, says hi to everyone, even the equipment staff, even so. I can only imagine even going into the arena, like when the ushers are done with their shifts, and saying hi to them. So just a good energy that he brings, and just at 24 years old. But also, actually, one notable, every player that was on the training camp roster practiced yesterday, except one person. The only person who did not practice yesterday, but did some solo work on his own with the assistant coaches, was Checkers captain Zach Dalpe. That was pretty much the only one who didn't practice yesterday, but he wasn't fully like inactive. He was just doing a little bit of individual work. So that good signs. This team looks like a very healthy bunch, because we've seen a team like Vegas. They announced that Nolan Patrick is not going to play this season at all. Robin Leonard is not going to play as well, and Mark Stone is like in a non-contact jersey to start the season. So, and Paul Maurice also spoke about the fitness testing that the Panthers had during media day yesterday. Of course, we the media aren't around during that, and those are really private for the most part. But of course, going onto the ice, seeing name by name, we have a roster right here of everyone, and seeing and just checking the boxes and seeing, okay, this person is here, and then talking about the fitness testing as well, that Paul Maurice spoke about after day one, and then of course speaking about Grigori Denisenko earlier. It seems to be that it first of all, credit to the strength and conditioning program coaches for the Panthers, but also credit to the players individually for the work that they've done this summer. And not only that comes with something, Nick, that comes with what they've done in prior seasons, building to what they do and saying, hey, this wasn't good enough last season, and coming back hungrier this season. And it just shows by the fitness that so far that we've seen these players in day one.
Yeah, and I think it comes to a couple things with that. Number one, I think the unfortunate conclusion of last season, as you said, the hunger to come in and prove themselves and to do better next season, I think definitely has a huge weight to it. But think about it this way. The franchise just traded the all-time leading scorer, okay, for Matthew Tkachuk. If that doesn't light a fire under you, I don't know what will, because it just showed that nobody's untouchable and that everybody's basically put on notice and that they expect more and they expect better. You can have a great regular season, but if you don't come to play or you basically disappear when it matters, maybe this isn't the team for you anymore, because this is not the same Florida Panthers team that we've seen in previous decades, I will say, or even probably in the last 15 years. So everybody has skin in the game and they have to come in ready. Anybody who's not coming in ready, they probably won't be either offered a contract or they will not be on this team for very long. So sorry to take like an angle like that, but I think that the motivation is at an all-time high. And I also think that, it's another maturity thing. People need to grow up. You can be, very familiar with the people that you play with, but at the end of the day, if the job's not getting done, changes need to be made, and it's a business and the team needs to move on. So I expect that, that those two things are the main driving force. And I can't wait to see exactly how the team is going to deal with that, starting the next month.
And mentioning it yesterday with Alexander Barkov being bulkier as well. We spoke about earlier in the show, Lucas Carlsson being bulkier too. So these guys, it just shows early on that these guys really have hit the gym. And Ekblad talking about 3 months in the gym versus just actually getting on the ice. So just a great motivated group of players who are just like we spoke about, hungry to get out there. And of course, health is so far on their side. Of course, we still have a few practices left before even their first preseason game against the Nashville Predators, a split squad matchup. We're recording this at 9:30 where on a Friday, where day 2 of practice is starting to get started. So a little bit of what's going on in practice so far right now. With Group B was starting the afternoon practice today. Yesterday, and now they were starting the morning session of practice today. Some of the standouts as far as the people who are actually there. I made it my way back to Orlando right after training camp yesterday. One of the praises has been Evan Knox as one of them. Justin Shortleff is actually not out there with Group 2 when he was out there yesterday. So that is some news coming into that's reported by Kobe Guy of Florida Hockey Now. And one other thing is that we've seen Colin White paired put together again with Tkachuk and Bennett so far in day 2 in the morning session. So seems like that what Colin White putting him there yesterday, it looks like it's going to be something continuing on the experiment for the Florida Panthers. So that's your day 2 first morning session update on the Florida Panthers in day 2 of training camp. So any final thoughts, Nick, on what's going on in media day 1, and so far from what we've heard of in day 2 of training camp?
No, everything sounds academic right now for the first day. I'm just glad to hear that everybody's in great spirits, and that it sounds like the players that need to bulk up or that need to be the ones that are being dependent on have actually, they're taking it seriously, and they're coming in, to take the team to the next level. Wanted to ask, the fact that Shortleff is not on Team B to start the day, do you think they moved him to A, or do you think there's something else going on?
We can only speculate right now with Justin Shortleff, but I'm looking at my paper right now. Yeah, he was part of Team B yesterday. I wrote the letter B next to him, so maybe getting some treatment, and then let's see how you feel in a few hours when you get a little bit of treatment, and then moving on to A. If it was A in the morning and B again, maybe this is nothing, and that he was getting the treatment, but just maybe waiting until the 12 o'clock practice. But we will have updates on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on the Twitter page, and of course the writers who are there in person for that. So maybe that, but maybe also maybe it's a maintenance day for Justin Shortleff as well. We don't know. And of course Paul Maurice is definitely going to be asked that, because Shortleff, a standout in last year's prospect showcase, even though he didn't get a goal in this one, he served some apples for sure, and he's great along the boards and has wicked speed as well. So who knows what is going on behind the scenes with Justin Shortleff, but we will be bringing that to everybody here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But Nick, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Thank you once again for coming on, and tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Thank you. Just really happy that the team's back here in South Florida, and Sunrise and also Coral Springs. But, can't wait to get the season started. But everybody can follow me on Twitter at Prudentia0, and look forward to hearing more podcasts and hearing about this team in the next couple of weeks. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Nick. And hopefully we get to have you on next week if a hurricane does not come to South Florida, because right now we've been seeing a projection of it. So hopefully we will have something to talk about, a preseason game come next Friday. So, thank you again, Nick.
You're welcome. I'll see you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden. We'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily podcast every Monday through Friday on all things NHL. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.